What's going on, everybody? This is John J Gaming on the mic here, coming at you with a brand new episode of the Coach Grossman Dynasty here on NCAA 14, featuring that college football revamp, of course. We're out here in the off season, and we got a lot of questions, man. We got to figure out, where does Southern Florida go from here, and specifically, where does Coach Grossman go from here? Is this the opportunity? Is this the time for him to go to the Power 5? Or does he stick around for at least one more season just to see if he can, try to build something of his own now that some of the previous coaching staff's guys are starting to leave the program? So, gonna figure all of that out. If you're excited for it, make sure you go ahead, smash that like button, hit subscribe as well if you gotta be brand new to the channel. And let's go ahead and get into his thing. Just go ahead, take a look at how this schedule went down for us over the course of the season. And we started off really good. We really did. We started off big neutral site win to get things going. We beat Nebraska, right? We beat them 45-35. Then we had some problems with NCAA 14. Both of these games end up freezing at the end. I simulated them both. We ended up losing both games, and that took us out of national championship discussion. But, we still had a lot to play for in conference play. We took care of things from there. Blew out Rice, beat North Texas, beat Florida Atlantic, UAB, beat Charlotte. Big blowout against East Carolina. And then we wrap up the season, big win against Memphis and Temple. And then, of course, win that war on I-4. Before we go into the conference championship game, we did win that pretty convincingly against Tulsa, but then we did get invited to go to the Birmingham Bowl instead of maybe a New Year's Six Bowl like we were hoping for, and Vanderbilt won it fair and square. They end up winning by a score of 27-24. It was just one of those games where we didn't want to necessarily be there, and it really showed out there on the field, man. It really did. It was a really tough one for us, tough pill for us to swallow, but at the end of the day, we just got to keep rolling. So that does go ahead and we go into the stats for this season for our players. And listen, Timmy McClain had another really nice year. He cut down on the interceptions, did end up with close to 3,000 yards passing, 32 touchdowns. His did have a slightly lower completion percentage, but the 2 years that he was a starter, he did really good for the most part. I really loved what he was able to accomplish. Plus, he was a very good running threat as well. Basically twice as many rushing yards as he did back in his first year as a starter. Still had 7 touchdowns, so lots of touchdowns for this guy. But we also found out that maybe Mitch Steele can possibly play a little bit. 15 for 38. 202 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. He will have an open opportunity to win the starting quarterback job. Going to compete with Ryan Wood, but I think he's going to have the inside jump on that. But we might get Ryan Wood into some packages, of course, given that he does have the ability to actually run the football. Now, for our ground game, though, Ben Archie did look pretty impressive. Ended up with over 1,000 yards on the ground, 186 carries. Really did a nice job as a guy that, stepped in that starting role for his first and only season. Didn't break as many tackles as he did last year, but, still a really dangerous threat. Of course, talked about Timmy McClain. And then Kenneth Simmons, he became our new backup. And in that backup role for the first time, looked good. Played for the first time in 2 seasons and ended up with over 700 yards, 3 touchdowns. Also saw Chuck Silva, our fullback, get into the end zone as well. He had 3 touchdowns in this one to go with it. Now, for the receivers, the receiving core, it was definitely a really young group for sure. And there was definitely some growing pains. But as the year went on, I felt like they definitely got better. I was really impressed, particularly with Tyler Ray, a true freshman. Ended up with 71 catches, which was a school record, 11 touchdowns, 840 receiving yards. Did have 4 drops. I'm hoping I can continue to see him get better when it comes to that. But, Tyler Ray certainly does have an extremely bright future ahead of him. I can't wait to see how he does. Spencer Tate also found the end zone quite a bit as well. 6 catches, 604 yards, 10 touchdowns. we were following up with some of the other young receivers, such as Trey Myers, who ended up with 600 yards and 3 touchdowns. Nathan Steffens, who was a true sophomore, he ended up with 480 yards and 6 TDs. Scott Morris, our tight end, ended up with 219 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then we saw Ben Archie and Clarence Billings, who, true freshman, did not expect him to play that much. He still found the end zone. Only had 4 catches on the year, though. Now, one thing that I do hardly talk about, though, is our offensive line. Now, the offensive line actually did really good this year. We had 4 guys have over 10 pancakes this year. DJ Ray led the way his last year, 12 pancakes and a sack. Markeith Kelly had 11 pancakes and 2 sacks. Then we had Marquise and Chris Thomas, which thankfully we're going to get both of these guys back for sure. Going to be key cogs on the offensive line next year. Both end up with double-digit pancakes. Really, I don't think we had anybody on this team that had more sacks allowed than pancakes, so that's a really good sign. Finally, on the defensive side of the football, Eric Houston ended up with 90 total tackles, so that did end up leading the team. Brandon Adams definitely followed through with that. Grady Nugent also ended up with 78 tackles in this one as well. In terms of pass rushing, I mean, we did have like elite pass rushers, I guess. Jamari Stewart was technically supposed to be that guy. He only ended up with 7 sacks over the course of the season. A little bit down from last year when he had 9. But we had a lot of different guys get sacks this year. Marvin Jackson had 6 sacks. Joe McCormick had 5. Bennett and Brandon Adams, they came in with 4. Jason Duncan, who was a true freshman, he had 3 sacks on the year, so that was really cool too. And then a bunch of other guys getting in there and getting some hits as well. Now, for interceptions, though, we didn't have a lot of interceptions this season. That was a little bit weird to me. But Jordan Smith and Eric Houston, both of our safeties, they led the way with 3 interceptions. And then we saw Kevin Lott, Brandon Adams, and Jalen Stokes get interceptions. Jalen Stokes in particular, and I believe Brandon Adams too, ended up with defensive touchdowns. Yes, they did. We forced only a handful of fumbles as well, as Jamari Stewart, Houston, Nugent, and Bennett got forced fumbles, but we did recover all of our fumbles. That is one really positive thing that we did end up getting in this one. Todd Wallen had a forced fumble. He actually really did not benefit from having the scheme change, 4-2-5, that really cuts out the outside linebackers. So we'll see if Jim Knowles leaves, and if so, maybe go back to a scheme that does favor outside linebackers, because we do have a lot of talent in our linebacking core. Now, running through the starters real fast, because there's so many custom prospects, in this dynasty, and I'm really thankful for that. So in order to make sure that this video doesn't get too terribly long and I'm not just covering custom prospects for half the video, I am going to have a little Google form sheet in the description for you guys to go ahead and check out, so that you can see how your custom prospects have performed over the course of the season, right? So that little note out of the way, we'll check in on the starters now. We saw some Cruz Wakefield, who this was his first year on the field. He did not see the field for this really talented Alabama team in his first 3 seasons. Finally got a shot in his junior redshirt campaign and looked good in the process, man. 59 catches, 716 yards, 11 touchdowns. Should be in that low 90s, for his senior year. So definitely somebody to watch out for in order to go ahead and make it to the NFL potentially. Now, as for Jonathan Falzon, he was on a team that had a really tough time this year. They went 0-12 this year. Definitely not a good look, but Jonathan Falzon, man, he was a bright spot on the team. He ended up with 9.5 sacks in this one, 30 tackles, 26 TFLs. It was not his fault that the team was terrible, right? It was just a really tough year for the Buffalo Bulls. Did also see him get a couple of pass deflections and his first forced fumble of his career. So Jonathan Falzon had a really good campaign. Not that high of an overall, though. Probably like low to mid 80s for his senior year. But, I mean, he's a smart kid, 82 awareness, and he can really hit very extremely well as well. So, Jonathan Thousand, he's at least a really good defensive player for Buffalo. As for Danny Daniel, we saw him, of course, starting his freshman year. That is pretty customary for NCAA 14 kickers and punters. Now, Danny Daniel had a really solid year overall. He ended up going 12 for 14 on field goals, 86% for that, and then also hit all of his extra points as well. Plus, he did not have anything blocked, which is a really good sign. Now, we'll go ahead and check and see if he had any tackles. No tackles for Danny Daniel, but a solid campaign for the true freshman. We'll see if he grows and builds upon those stats later. So the Kansas State Wildcats did end up winning the championship, at least in the Big 12 conference, and a big reason was the performance that he was able to put up. I mean, he's now an 80 overall, and first couple of years, man, he was, a rotational piece, came in here and there, but first year as a starter, his stats shot up tremendously. Ended with 8.5 sacks, not as good as Jonathan Thousand, but to be fair, he did play against tougher competition. Did also chip in with 2 fumble recoveries, one of which I know he had in that Big 12 championship. For those of you that watched the recruiting special, definitely check that out. It's in the playlist. 24 tackles, 24 TFLs, and 37 assisted tackles. Some great stuff across the board. Don't know how good Kansas State will be because a lot of their key guys were seniors. So, Chris Hill might be one of the best players on the team next year. Now, for Isaiah King, this was a difficult senior year for him because Louisiana Tech, man, they saw their conference decimated by the recent alignments. Now, there will be a few new teams from Power 5 conferences as well as the American in order to get this Conference USA back to 12 because they're not doing very well in their current conferences. But despite that, Isaiah King, played all 4 years. Actually had a little bit of a down year. 880 yards, 7 touchdowns. Did end up with 403 yards after the catch, but did not have as many drop passes as he did last year. So that's really good. Yeah, just really somebody that, didn't have a lot of talent around him at Louisiana Tech. So I think if he was redshirt, he probably would make it to the NFL, no question. But that being said, don't know if that'll actually happen or not. But if so, that's tough because I know he's a really talented kid. So now we go ahead and check into Bear Footlock, who did end up starting after, surprisingly winning the role midway through last year, but not as good as his sophomore campaign. Ended up with still 800 yards, 3 touchdowns on the ground, which is solid, but the year before that, 1,100 yards, 10 touchdowns. But he did contribute more in the passing game, though. He had more catches, more yards, and more touchdowns, so that's good to see. Still has 1 more year of eligibility. He's an 81 overall right now, and he's looking pretty good across the board, man. I love what he brings to the table, and yeah, man, you absolutely love to see what Bear Footlock has accomplished. Meanwhile, in what was kind of a difficult year for Old Dominion, they did transfer into the Sun Belt Conference, moving from Conference USA, and even with Caleb Williams, they were not very good this year. But that being said, we did see a slight bump in Kevin Sparks' stats over the course of the season. More catches, more yards, and twice as many touchdowns. He's not too terribly favored in the passing game, but hopefully that will change as he gets a little bit more experience and he becomes, a higher overall than some of the wide receivers that are currently on the roster. Over at Texas State, we got Micah Jackson out here rocking with the Texas State Bobcats, and first year as a starter, kind of struggled a little bit, not gonna lie to you. 5 pancakes, 4 sacks. At least he didn't allow more pancakes than sacks, but could be a little bit better on the offensive line. He is a 73, so that is something to do with it. More of a run blocking guy. We'll see if Michael Jackson had any tackles, and no, he did not record any tackles as well. But to be a 2-star prospect and already starting in your freshman year, that's pretty cool to see. Now, one thing that is not as cool to see is John Johnson kind of leaving in a whimper, man. He never ended up topping 1,000 yards. He did end up with 874 yards and 7 touchdowns, but he did manage to break out an 80-yard run at some point in the season. So that ends up being extremely cool. We'll see if he did much in the passing game, and, you know, had a little bit more of in his junior year, but only 4 receptions for 63 yards. Did have the 1 touchdown as well. So, I mean, kind of an overwhelming career, given, you know, he was a 4-star prospect coming into this one, and someone, you know, maybe could make it to the NFL, could see him as a late round pick, but only time could tell. Now, someone that had a little bit more of a breakout season, or at least a nice bowl game, was Gladiator Aruba. He was fantastic in the Big Ten championship game, and, I mean, he doubles up his yards, so he has 750 yards, 45 catches, 6 touchdowns to go with it as well, one of which we did, of course, see in the Big Ten championship. And then chipped in with some rushing. You know, ended up with his most carries ever, free. And he ends up with 26 yards and didn't find the end zone on the ground, but, you know, someone that, you know, for 5'5", you know, he could, you know, make it to the NFL as a slot receiver, maybe a 7th round guy, or he might go undrafted, being that he's an 89 overall. But don't sleep on Gladiator Aruba, man. He is someone that, you know, he was dangerous when, you know, he's able to utilize his speed to the best of his abilities. But now we get into probably one of the biggest decisions that I think we've had in an offseason is, what do we want to do with Coach Grossman, right? So we're out here, we're offered a contract extension, but I want to look for a Power 5 job. Now, the big caveat in this is that I don't want to go to just any Power 5 school. We do have a custom recruit in Mitch Steele that we do get to play with. He does start next season. But if there is a Power 5 school out there that's looking for a coach, and they have at least one custom prospect already at least signed on the program, or is going to go ahead and, you know, already is on the program, then we're going to go there. But for now, I'm going to jump into this coaching carousel, and I'll let you guys know what ends up happening if we stay at USF or we go somewhere else. And would you look at that, we were offered the head coaching job at the University of Oklahoma. Now, Oklahoma does have 2 custom prospects that have signed, you know, in the recruiting class for this year. Sawyer Thompson and then Bjorn Ironside II are also going to be here as well. And joining the SEC, one of the toughest conferences in college football. I mean, this is a program with a rich history. They've been a little bit down the last couple of seasons, but I think we can get them back on track. We got, you know, the footprint, all that stuff. I am accepting that job in a heartbeat. I am now the new head coach of Oklahoma, baby. Let's go, man. So it does look like that while the coordinators were ended up retained, we saw Lincoln Riley actually get fired. So we got some big shoes to fill. Lincoln Riley, you know, did a lot for the University of Oklahoma, but I'm really curious to see, where did Lincoln Riley go to school? Where was, I guess, his new destination, right? So we'll see who ends up, you know, where does Lincoln Riley go? He should be a head coach somewhere, right? Like, I feel like he should, you know, at least have that opportunity. And wow, he's actually an offensive coordinator. He's now the offensive coordinator of the Florida Gators, which, by the way, did end up winning the national championship. So that's going to be really interesting to watch it unfold. And then, of course, we do end up seeing a new head coach for USF. Looks like Mike Denbrock is going to take over. Solid prestige, but hasn't done anything against really anyone of note. 0-6 for the top 25, but has a decent record, hovering around 500. The expectation is going to be a little bit smaller, given that you're going to lose quite a bit of guys. So that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at the players that are leaving our program for Oklahoma. Now, this is a really interesting time. Oklahoma has a ton of pros on the team. You know, Savion Byrd, Jaleel Faroque, Chuck Stevenson, Matt Herring, Clayton Smith. These are all day 2 picks, and then a few day 3 picks as well. And Danny Stutzman, Jason Powell, who's a punter, and then Ethan Downs also would be a 7th round pick. There are also a couple of players trying to declare for the draft. Nate Parts, who is a 6th round pick, but what I like to do realistically, if they're not like a top 3 round pick, I do ask them to stay, because realistically, you're not going to declare, most likely not going to declare early for the draft if you're not at least like a day 2 pick. So going with the good old stay for the college degree, because you never know what could happen. And then we're going to do the same thing with Parker over here, as we'll get him to get those guys to stay. We do also have a few people going into the transfer portal. That is the reality of college football, especially with the insane amount of talent that Oklahoma usually brings in. Now, one player I'm not going to convince to stay is Mike Johnson. He's feeling homesick. Millrose Park, Illinois product. He's going back to Illinois. He's going to have to sit out a year. But these two guys are going to try to bring in Deshaun White, trying to leave for Nevada. And yeah, he's not going to go. And then we'll just try to do the same thing with Jarrell Ryan. We'll see if he goes. And yeah, neither of them are going to leave. So we're going to lose 3 players to the transfer portal. But, really good draft class that we should get a nice little XP bonus for. Alright, so with that being said, that is going to go ahead and take us into recruiting. And I just wanted to focus in on 2 guys, to be honest. We're in the SEC. It's a really tough conference, and I don't want to afford, to bring in guys that, maybe if they have to step in their true freshman year, that they aren't going to be ready for the moment. So I'm only going after 2 players. One is Sawyer Thompson. He's a number 3 quarterback in this recruiting class. Technically, this shouldn't even be a recruiting battle. We should have already gotten him. So I'm putting in 4,200 just to be safe, because sometimes NCAA does like being a little hoe. But we have an 8,000 point lead. I'm looking pretty good there. But I'm also putting in a ton of points for Chad Toph. He's listed as a 76 overall athlete. I won't know until after we sign him, most likely, but he is a 5-star. He is the number 7 athlete in this recruiting class and seems to be a really good fit for our football program. We're in a battle between us, Nebraska, Marshall, and Central Michigan. So these are the 2 guys I'm going to go after. Anyone else, if Carl Dean and Aaron Holt want to sign as well, that's cool, but I'm not going to be broken up if we don't end up getting them. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and move things over to signing day, and I'll catch you guys there. Alright, so there was 2 guys that I specifically went after, and we're going to end up getting both of them. Chad Toph and Sawyer Thompson are both going to sign with our team, so we got 2 custom recruits officially at Oklahoma. Also managed to get Eric Brown, which that'll be pretty nice, decent little depth piece. So we end up signing 3 guys in that signing day, and we end up signing a top 5 class, mostly put together by Lincoln Riley. None of them did flip commitments or anything like that after he did end up getting fired. But let's take a look at where we stand. We actually are number 5, but not the best recruiting class in the SEC. Notre Dame had the number 1 recruiting class in college football. Texas actually did have the best recruiting class. They ended up with the number 2 class overall. We end up with number 5, so I'm feeling pretty good about that. We finished 5-7 in conference play this year with 9 conference games, and yeah, we're just gonna have to go ahead and see how everything else shakes out. And let's also go ahead and check out where the other custom prospects who did not officially sign yet, we'll see where they ended up going as well. So first and foremost, we see Dennis John McDaniel actually going, if I'm not mistaken, hang on, let me go ahead and see if I'm reading this. Yeah, so Naheem McDaniels, he's a cornerback. He went up going to Troy, and his brother is going to do the same thing, man. He is also going to Troy as well. And Troy got him pretty lucky. No one really went after this kid, surprisingly. So a 4-star is just going to walk on the Troy football team, and he's going to be a really big add for that football program anyways. So nice to see Troy getting 2 custom prospects in 1 season. For John Gordon, we do also end up seeing him go to Southern Florida Now, we were recruiting this kid while we were at Southern Florida, but even though we did leave for Oklahoma, he is still going to sign with that program as well. So, he'll be, backing up Mitch Steele, I believe, if I got that correct. Then another wide receiver signing. This time, Davies Richardson, 5-star receiver. Man, Troy put together a class. 3 custom prospects going to the same school. That is absolutely insane to me. 6'2", 200 pounds. That is a big add. So 2 wide receivers, 2 quality wide receivers, and then a cornerback for the custom prospects. Really big day for the Troy Trojans here on signing day for sure. For Henry Stings, we do see him signing with Texas A&M. Now, he was only a 22% lock, so Henry Stings, definitely getting a little bit lucky. Kind of like fell in between the cracks. I'm sure he is going to be proving a lot of people wrong, though. Watch out for this kid. And then finally, Jermel Jackson, who we were also recruiting at Southern Florida. He has made his decision, but not going to the Southern Florida Bulls. He is actually going to Vanderbilt to play with the Commodores. They, guess he liked what he saw in that Birmingham Bowl and gonna sign with that program. That's gonna be a pretty big boost for them as well, even with their SEC membership kind of in limbo right now. And I'll kind of explain that, a little bit towards the end of the episode, thanks to the realignment for Conference USA. So now we go ahead and jump into the position changes that we do have planned. And, it's a brand new roster, so I kind of want to look around and see what we got. And right from the get-go, should have 2 really great receivers, Dan Romero, and then also Brett Parker, who we convinced the same. Plus, on the defensive end, we will have Nate Parks, who is a true senior himself, who, ironically, I believe we also managed to convince to stay as well. So we do have 1 athlete. We did sign Chad Toph, and we signed him pretty well in the recruiting process. Could put him at running back. He is a 78. He's either a running back or a free safety. So we'll take a look at both depth charts real quick. Looks like he'll be about a 4th string running back, or if we put him at free. Okay, so we do have a free safety already signed in Eric Brown, but no new running back signed. So I'm going to go ahead and move Chad Toph to running back. That looks good. And then I'll get back to you guys if I have any more changes that I want to make right now. So I think another change that I wanted to go ahead and do right now is I want to move one of these freshmen over to the left-hand side. I think I'm going to move Jamari Thompson over to left tackle, so at least we'll be free deep at each of our tackle positions. Don't like the offensive linemen that we brought in necessarily. I wish they were a tad bit better, so that's going to be a point of emphasis, I think, for us while we're recruiting next year. Getting some guys that can actually, block for us and block at an SEC level. Now, another thing that I did want to go ahead and do for right now is I want to move one of these left ends over to the right-hand side. Now, John Webb, he's a senior. He's not going to play at the left end position, but if I move him to right end, he could possibly, win the starting job. We'll see what happens between him, Mike Morrow, who is, number 2 defensive end in the country, in this recruiting class. So definitely some talent over here. Definitely be a battle between him, Marcus Johnson, and Mike Morrow. So that will be a really intriguing thing to watch over and to see what happens. Middle linebacker. Do I want to do anything at middle linebacker? I don't think so. I don't really have a lot going on here. Well, I could move Andy Miller. Do I want to move him to the left or to the right? Really, we'll move him over to the left, so that way we're free deep on each of our linebacker spots, because I don't know what scheme we're going to run because of the fact that we are at a new school, and I'm going to take the playbooks for both our offensive and defensive coordinators. So right now we may be in a 4-2-5 defense, and on top of that, we also have a Utah State playbook. That might not be completely reflected, though, when we start this season. I'll kind of go into that maybe before we officially start season 6. But yeah, man, that is all the coaching position changes that I wanted to make. So I'll go ahead and simulate to the training results and see what we got. All right, so it looks like we got ourselves some 90 plus overall guys across the board, but best player on our team is going to be Dan Romero. He is a 99 officially, and we'll have Brett Parker, who's a 97. So we got our possession guy, and then we got our speed guy over here too. So that's going to be a really fun combination, especially when we get into non-conference play and maybe play some cupcakes. That is an SEC tradition that I'm told. And look at this, Sean Albert. He's a 94. Atkins is a 92. This wide receiver core is absolutely insane. It is not like what we saw at Southern Florida, man. I'm gonna have so much fun passing the football, dude. It's gonna be great. But who's gonna be the quarterback though? Looks like Maurice Royal is gonna be our starting quarterback. Now, he is not fast at all. He is an 89. He has 58 speed, man. That is slow. He is slower than molasses. He did throw 24 touchdowns and 8 picks last year, but he's got a cannon. So he does have that going for him. We might try to get Ed Marshall in for, some packages. I don't know. We'll have to, sit back and think about what I want to do there. But the cannon is certainly there for Maurice Royal. Antonio Dunn is going to be our starting tailback. He's got 95 speed. It's going to be a 92 overall. So that's going to be awesome to work with. Ryan Gordon is a fullback. It is what it is. Receiving core is going to be insane. Nick Andrews is an 87, and so is Jeremy Tate, and they're fighting for the 5 spot right now. Like, we got some receivers, man. I'm ecstatic for it. Drew Myers, 93. We actually do have 3 tight ends, so we're probably going to need to recruit some in recruiting next season. We'll see offensive line. We got some, solid offensive linemen. The depth is going to be a little bit questionable behind the experienced players. So beyond this year, could be a little bit of an issue. But for now, we do have a really good offensive line. So I do really like that. Over on the defensive side of the football, though, we got Matt Berg, who will end up, winning that job. 88 overall, 76 speed. Then on the right-hand side, Marcus Johnson actually pulls away. He will win the starting job. Freshman redshirt. He did get redshirt in his true freshman year and will, be playing over on that side. 80 speed too. For a guy that's 268 pounds, he is going to be a menace. And then if we do go with 2 defensive tackles, do it with something like 4-3, 4-2-5. This will be really good. Keem Lewis and Brent Thomas clogging up the middle. They're both run stoppers with some good depth behind them as well. Linebackers, they're going to be growing. Matt Mays is 83. Eric Gunn is an 81. And then Anthony Baker is also happens to be the 83 overall. And I think that move was helpful, to get him over there. Defensive backs are solid. They're not great by any means, but, we'll at least be too deep. Nickel and dime packages will be fine. We don't have any, I don't think we might have 1 ball hawk. Matt Ratliff is a ball hawk, and then I'm sure Nate Parks will be a ball hawk. So, really going to be dependent on our safeties when it comes to the secondary. And then rounding out the squad, we do have Dwayne Parks as our kicker. He's an 84, and nothing for a punter. So our punter's a true freshman. We'll need a new kicker this, this upcoming season. So that's something to think about as well. All right, so we are here at the, one of the toughest things you can do as a coach. It's cutting these players, man. And we only have 6 cuts that we need to make. Now, I'm looking at this roster. I'm looking at the bottom right now, and we're in the SEC. I know I said this before, but it's just important to note that 59 overall players is not going to cut it. These low 60 guys, moving forward, I do not want to bring these players in if I don't have to. Personally, if you're not at least a 70, when it comes to, recruiting, then I'm not going to go after you. It's just going to be how it is. But roster, down to our final 70, I'm liking what I'm seeing, man. We got some very good talent across the board. I don't think we really have any weaknesses per se. It's just going to come down to coaching and execution. Really is what it's going to barrel down to. So, we just got to go ahead, go out there, get it done. And hey, we'll see what we can do this year. Second year in the SEC, we can surely do better, hopefully, than the 5-7 year that we had previously in the last time out. So yeah, man, let's go ahead and get to it. All right, so in the last bit of conference realignment that I wanted to do in a little bit, what I ended up doing, since the Conference USA was only had 6 teams when, the modern realignment was taken care of, I took the worst teams in the Dynasty from the SEC, the American, and the ACC, and I put them in this Conference USA. So now it's back up to 12 teams. So some of the newcomers include East Carolina, South Carolina, Wake Forest. We do also have Georgia Tech, SMU, and Vanderbilt join the fold, who we did just lose to, but they had one of the lowest prestiges in the conference, and they weren't a newcomer to the SEC last year, so they are moving down to Conference USA. So if I'm not mistaken, that does mean that every conference now does have a conference championship, so that's going to be really cool to see. We are still in a conference with 14 teams, and there's an insane amount of talent. I mean, still got like 3 teams that ended up being ranked in the top 25. The only other conference with 14 teams is the Big Ten. They also have 14, but they got 5 ranked teams, man. So actually no, 6 ranked teams. So that'll be really interesting to see. I'm excited for what's going to happen on this schedule. And with that, let's go ahead and jump right into it. What is our schedule looking like moving into year 6? Alright, man, so when I said the SEC is a grind, I was not joking, man. Look at the schedule that we got put together, man. I mean, we got some marquee matchups for sure. Starting off with 2 road games in a row, we take on Ole Miss and Arkansas on the road. Then we got home games versus Kentucky and Auburn. Then to round out the first half of the season, we'll go on the road to play against Tennessee, and then at home to play against Texas as well as part of that Red River Showdown. After that, we do have 2 of our free non-conference games. We'll play Cal on the road. They're a top 15 preseason team. And then our really only cupcake on this schedule, we got Kansas. That is our only cupcake. Other than that, it's going to be a challenge for sure. Before we go into our remaining games, we do have Mississippi State. We have a road game against Texas A&M. And then Missouri at home. Then the Bedlam series. That is going to be a neutral site game against Oklahoma State, and I am pumped for that, man. We're going to have a great star-studded schedule, and I am so looking forward to this schedule. We're going to have a lot of fun this season. But now let's go ahead and jump into the players that I do plan on redshirting, and I just checked the playbook for Oklahoma. We're going to be running a spread offense, and we're going to be in a free 4 defensive set according to our coordinators, so that'll be interesting moving forward. But in terms of guys we're going to redshirt, I'm going to redshirt Sawyer Thompson. He's a 4th-string quarterback. I'm not really worried about him getting early playing time. We can always burn his redshirt as well if we need to. Then we'll also redshirt Andrew Smith and Chad Toph, 2 guys that probably won't see the field. They're both buried on the depth chart as well. Over on the defensive side of the football, I am going to go ahead and redshirt both Brent Thomas, who is, really good player. Don't get me wrong, but we can save that year of eligibility in order for him to go ahead and, be even better moving forward. Plus, we can also redshirt Mark Hall, who has a long way to go before he's ready for SEC football. We do have some solid depth in James McGee and William Tompkins behind Akeem Lewis. And finally, the last redshirt that I wanted to go ahead and make is Eric Brown. He would be the 4th-string safety, for the free safety group, and definitely far off from the likes of Matt Ratliff, Kyle Kennedy, Sean Hall. I mean, got some room to work on, right? So we're going to redshirt Eric Brown so that you can go ahead and, learn the playbook a little bit, all that good stuff. But I love the roster that I'm working with, and I think we can do some special things this year. I truly do. So with that being said, you guys are probably wondering, how do you want to get a custom prospect in this dynasty? Well, so with that being said, I will have a template in the description that will, let you know, how to fill that out, all that good stuff. You will start off as either a high school senior or as a JUCO player, and then you will be recruited, included in the recruiting class. Will follow your collegiate career. Maybe you'll appear in a recruiting special if you end up being a starter and they end up making a bowl game, conference championship, even a national championship, right? So that being said, if that's something you're interested in, make sure you go ahead and fill that out down in the comments section down below. And with that being said, I hope you enjoyed today's off-season recap. And if you did, man, make sure you go ahead, smash that like button, hit subscribe as well if you do happen to be brand new to the channel. This is John J Gaming on the mic signing off, but I'm hoping you're all out there having a good one. Take care, everybody.